Okay, so we're done unwrapping. We have baked our ambient occlusion, which will serve as a guideline. And now we're ready to start texturing. So the first thing I think about is what colors I will use and why I want to use these colors. So the first thing I will do is I open up my unwrap in Photoshop. I put my ambient occlusion on top of it. I really roughly block out the colors. So these are actually the first three kind of ideas I had, the first three blockouts I made. According to color theory, harmonious colors are two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So they create a high contrast and they make something stand out. So that would be blue and orange, yellow and purple, red and green. But they don't have to be exact. You know, that you can kind of switch them up a bit and it will still work. To me, blue and red, for example, still work really well, even though they're not really complementary. When you work with these kind of colors, you can't really do very much wrong. It's pretty easy and straightforward. However, I actually had a pretty hard time choosing the colors. So this is kind of the first, it's red and green. Then I have a light blue and a yellowish orangey. And then I have a darker blue and red. I have them set up here in Max. So these are the first three ideas kind of I had. So I had a hard time making up my mind. There's a lot of things I don't like about these, but something I didn't like, and I think it's an easy, well, I wouldn't really call it a mistake, but a straightforward solution to wanting to work with mainly two colors is kind of the tendency to divide them up into 50-50 parts. So thinking, oh, I want to use two colors. Well, I'll make the wings one color and then I'll make the body another color, which to me is pretty boring. And like I said, straightforward. So a good rule would be to think about the 70-30 rule, which is usually something they use in terms of designing something or composition. But I found that it can also apply to many other things, even choosing colors. For something like this, where 50-50 splits is kind of boring, and making it more 70-30 would actually make it more interesting. As you can see, my final result actually ended up being my body and the wings being the same color, but then having these yellow-orange stripes as an accent, and then also using the engine as a contrast or a focus point. Another thing I didn't like about them was that they're kind of messy, which of course is extremely normal for a blockout and for this early in the texturing process. But it's actually, what I mean is that the elements are not very cohesive. As you can see, in the beginning, I wanted to make this top part out of wood. Here it's like a darker wood kind of, same thing here. But the wood color I use here is a different type of wood than what I use for the wing frame and the propellers, which results in a lot of separate elements, and it really feels that it's all separate. You have the gray here in the front from the metal, and then you have the lighter wood for the wing frame and the propellers, and the darker gray for the engine, and then there's this darker wood on top. It's really a lot. So a way I try to fix that, if you look at my final, is by making sure that things repeat. So the metal in front is actually then carried through. Here the entire top part is metal. And then the wood I used all of the wood elements I have are kind of the same color. It's not like one very dark and then another very light and then another is kind of medium. It's all kind of the same. And then also you have the metal I have here is kind of returning in the wings as well. And then even here at the top. So this to me made it feel more like one cohesive object and made everything feel more connected. The yellow I used as a contrast here in the body of my plane is also the same type of yellow I use for the bombs. So I think that's something interesting to keep in mind. So now onto the actual painting. Just like when we're designing the model and we're creating it, we're over-exaggerating certain qualities. That's kind of what we want to do here in our texture as well. Something I do a lot and I think works pretty well is next to every crease, every dark part, there will be a highlight. So for example, here in the metal and also in the wings, it's really obvious. The reason for that is usually where you have a crease in real life, there's also a part that will be sitting a bit higher, and so it will catch more light. So that's something that we want to accentuate in our texture when we're painting. I can show you a picture here of an actual real life, I think it's a miniature model of the plane I made. Right here where you have this crease, right next to it there's this highlight. Same thing here at the top. So those are the kind of things that we want to make pop with our texture. Another thing to keep in mind is what parts of my object are in the shadow and what parts are in light. This is, the main reason that we made our ambient occlusion, so that we don't have to think about that all of ourselves. But the ambient occlusion won't do everything. So for example, here the top wing will be brighter than the bottom wing. And the reason for that is because the top wing sits on top of the bottom wing. However, here you can see that I did really make those highlights, and that's because the bottom wing actually sticks out further if you go to top view than the top wing, so that would still catch some light. The easiest thing to do would be to assume a top light. So the plane is outside, the sun is shining, and there's just simple light coming from the top, nothing too intense. Because that makes it pretty easy, for example, here as well, to really get that light in there, and then right here it gets dark. Same thing here, you have this kind of curved part. Because it's metal, it will be highly reflective, so you have this really big highlight here, and then it's also lighter at the sides. And that also makes it pretty easy for your wings, because if there was like a spotlight coming from here, from this one side, then it would be really hard to give these two wings the same texture, because that one would be way darker than this one. And so assuming the light is coming from the top, I also made these two corners here highlighted. This part is highlighted, and then in the general body there's a gradient from light to dark. Okay, so let's say that we want to paint this wing here. I go to Photoshop and I make sure that my unwrap is visible, because otherwise I won't be entirely sure where I'm painting just in the beginning. So I create a new layer, and I want to make sure when I color pick my color that the ambient occlusion is on, because otherwise the colors will be off. So when I go darker, I want to make the color a bit more to the purplish side and make it pretty dark, and then with a round no transfer brush I will just trace the outline. This really doesn't have to be perfect because it will change a lot as we go. Okay, so now we're going to turn off the unwrap. As we can see, my wings have these metal platings, kind of. So we want to get those in there, just like that. It might be a bit small, but it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect for this tutorial. So now to accentuate these lines, I usually go with an even darker color and a smaller brush, and then just really, that might be a bit small. Yeah, really get in there. Right, so let's see what this looks like. Right, so this is what we have now. As you can see, it's really basic, but you kind of get the idea. This here is a bit messy, but we'll fix that. Right, so now what I do is I color pick, and I go a bit to the lighter side here on the blue side. And I want to pick something that isn't too light, but yeah, this will work. So now we will, like I said, next to every crease we will have a highlight. So with a round brush with transfer on, I will just go next to these lines. That's a bit too much. Okay, so now I will just kind of start blending these in here. And, you know, to blend, I color pick a lot. And don't be afraid to mess up the lines you just made. It's really easy to get them back. It's fine. So I'm not going to do everything. You might want to get a bit of that dark back in there. Let's say this is a good start. Could be blended a bit more, I think, but we'll see. So, text one. And let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. So I think this is an okay start. You know, it doesn't look as good as it does here, but here you can see I really made a lot of layers there. So basically you just keep on building it up. Let's say that this part is finished. First, let's do this this metal part here. We want to check out the frame, and we want to start from here and go that way. And I think that color can actually be, because it's a crease, so it can be pretty dark. And I will just again trace this line. Yeah. Now I will take a mid-gray and just fill this up to get rid of the blue. Probably should have done that before shading. And I actually made the same mistake when I made, you know, the one that's on Sketchfab right now. I also did the plating first and then realized that I wanted to do this as well. So be smart, don't do that. Now with a lighter gray, I will accentuate. Same thing here, and you don't have to be super exact. It's okay, you know, you are allowed to see that it's hand painted. I think that's what makes it so beautiful and makes it look so nice. So some light here on the sides and then in the middle as well, maybe a reflective highlight, but you don't want to lose those darker mid grays. Now go even lighter. Okay, so I think, you know, again, this could be blended a lot more and you could spend a lot more time on this, but for now it gets the idea across. So let's check it out. Yeah, there we go.